This is Encrypted Ambition, a podcast about the builders rewriting the rules. Join Petronella Technology Group as we decode the ideas, challenges, and momentum behind tomorrow's business, technology, and leadership breakthroughs.
Hello, and welcome to another episode here of our podcast. Sitting in front of me is none other than Sarah from Relate Center. Sarah is an amazing therapist. She has been in this space for quite a while. 35 years of experience working with individuals, couples, professionals. Sarah really takes a science-based approach, deeply personal approach to creating lasting relationships that not only work in your personal life, but also in your professional career. Not only has Sarah's impact gone beyond the therapy room, she delivers workshops on teamwork, leadership, communication, and businesses all across the country. Sarah, welcome to our podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Blake. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Hopefully that does you some justice there.
Yeah, it's a lovely intro.
I had more. I could have kept going, but I wanted you to get it.
Well, let's get into the meat of it. That's good for me.
Yeah. So tell everybody, I've told everybody what you do, but let's put your frame on it.
Sure. Well, you did a beautiful job, but
thank you.
I am a clinical social worker by training and have a specialty in sex and relationship counseling. And some of my colleagues and I have built a business called Relate Center in Austin, Texas, where we're really putting together all the new kind of data on what helps people have the best physical and emotional intimate relationship. So that means physical therapists, Pilates, psychotherapists, physicians. We really work to give people a well-rounded sense of professional help.
Where did the need come for you guys to start Relate Center? And where was that burning passion? Hey, we have to do this.
Well, it was really hard to find people who had really specific skills to help in this area. And we kept finding that people got dropped. Like you would have a client and you want to send her to a physical therapist, but then that never happened, or we didn't have any way really to come back and make sure that the person was getting an individual kind of an experience. And we really wanted to make sure that we were all talking and that we really had this bigger view for the individual or the couple. And so we just started working with a couple of people who had the same philosophy and just said, hey, let's do this. And we've now been in business about 16 years.
Wow. It sounds like you kind of got through a lot of the ups and downs, obviously working in healthcare, there's a lot of fun stuff that you guys have to go through when you're dealing with patient records. I mean, health data is very sensitive data. Talk about how you kind of got through some of those data challenges that businesses do.
Well, I think that's such a good question, because what we decided to do to protect people's privacy was be out of network providers. So in network, I would have to prove that somebody was crazy enough, sick enough to still get help. And I was often dealing with administrators about trying to prove someone needed my care. So we decided as an out-of-network provider, even though it was more costly, it provided people more protection. We felt like people who were more famous, well-known, were hesitant to come in because they didn't want those records to be in anyone else's file. So we thought about it from that point of view, as well as just generally wanting to help, streamline the services. Many times, if you were just looking for a network, you were more limited on who actually had the specialty you were looking for. So that helped us. We all keep our own records. We all work with our own kind of system. So we're an individual practice. We're a group of individually minded practice people with the same philosophy. But that's how we ended up with it. And it clearly has, limits, because we wish for people to be able to have access to insurance and to help that they should have. But we're just trying to deal with the real world here.
Yeah. Since you started Relate Center to now, how have you seen the business evolve?
Well, we went through COVID.
Yeah.
So I think the most important thing is we all learned how to do online counseling. So how do we try to reach people? And, that was a big advantage for many, many people, not even after COVID, because of, I don't know what traffic is like in Las Vegas, but in Austin, it's crazy. And it would take people an hour to get to an office, and then an hour to get home. So it's really opened up people's ability to get help. And in that way, it's more cost effective for people and for us.
It's
And I
convenient.
can be in New Jersey and I'm still working with people because I can work with people from different, because I also have a coaching certificate. So I have an international coaching certificate as well as a license. And that helps me immediately have protection.
Yeah, with your background in psychology and clinical social work, how did you kind of transition into coaching and the thought leadership training?
Well, I've always had an interest in giving practical help and working with entrepreneurs. That's kind of my area of most enjoyment, really. People who are kind of spared to try and do some of their own kinds of things, men and women, not necessarily businesses, but that kind of personality. So as I decided to move to a beautiful place, another beautiful place, I needed to find ways that I could see more clients that weren't just in my state. And so that has given me the flexibility to do that.
That is epic. Um, I'm curious as to your approach to healthcare. Obviously, therapy is one of those things that's a very catered, scientific, psychological intervention, if we can use that term.
Yeah.
How is the approach that Relate Center takes to psychotherapy different than somebody you would stereotypically sit down on a couch with and chalk it up?
I think that's such a good question because there are lots of different modalities and many modalities have fit for many different kind of people. So we really, I think who we attract are people who want a lot of science-based studies and data. So a lot of our practice is around sexual health. So many of our clients come from physicians who need to have someone looking at a different kind of filling in what they can't do medically. Um, so that's part of who I think we're attracting is there are people who are referrals. I think our approach is also practical. So we want people to, like, why are they here? What are your goals? Are we meeting your goals? We do long-term therapy, some of us as well, but all really with are we helping someone get from A to Z so that they can really see progress and feel it physiologically as well.
When obviously a lot of people use kind of COVID as a transition period. We've heard it so many times. The way that businesses operate immediately had to shift during COVID, especially now with the prevalence of telehealth. What was that transition like for Relate Center? Getting people comfortable kind of doing the telehealth, or were you guys already kind of ready to go
Well,
when that happened?
that's interesting that you're asking me about that because I had taken a part-time position while I was out of town, uh, working with an online company. So I was already starting uh, to look at that, to learn how to use the computer, to learn kind of how to use different avenues. So when COVID happened, I really already had a preview and a jump start to it. That helped me a lot. And I think we also just trying to figure out how do we get services to people. There was an organization, a national organization that offered free therapy to people in healthcare. So a lot of us signed up for that so that we could really reach the people in need. And when you're talking to people in, in the hospitals or watching people die all the time, you want to be able to get them access right away to get some help with that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm assuming now that you've been so successful at Relate Center and the way that you see patients, has your approach to the way that you serve customers through telehealth changed? Have you shifted the business to accommodate?
Yes, absolutely. Especially because now that I am, I have to do virtual work most of the time, unless I'm doing workshops. And I think it's worked really, really well. It's nice that we still have people in who can do in person. I think it's a great combination of some people who want to be able to keep doing online, as well as the people who really want to come and see someone in person.
Yeah. I'm curious as to, obviously when you start a healthcare service company, I mean, especially when you're handling, patient records, obviously HIPAA comes to mind. You have to deal a lot with HIPAA, the way that you handle data, the way that you transmit data. What was your thought process to approaching HIPAA, to approaching patient data, how it's stored, how it's transmitted, and how did you bring some of those built-in compliance and security mandates into your practice?
That is a complicated answer, and so I'm going to tell
Yeah,
you my process. So
sure.
I did sign up. I do an online scheduling, credit card note taking service.
Sure.
I limit what I actually put down in terms of my notes. I keep my file drawer with notes. Um, I try not to actually write down anything that I think could get my client in trouble,
Sure.
because I don't really try. I've had a bad experience with the courts, getting my notes and um, not being as careful as I should have been earlier in my career when I didn't understand kind of the consequences.
Sure.
But certainly it's been very, I don't know how you all or what you're finding out about this, but it's really hard to find programs that are geared for small businesses.
Totally.
So many of these programs are really built for these big companies with lots of therapists and do insurance that are really kind of geared that way, and can be very expensive. So, we're always kind of struggling about what's the best program that can give me what I need, protects my clients, protects them financially, but also has some kind of flexibility of how I work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's an interesting perspective, and thank you for being so candid and so honest. And I'm sure obviously in your entire amazing career you've learned a lot, and you've changed a lot, and you've grown a lot. So the way that you do business and the way that you handle information, not only that too, but it's just changed a lot over the years. Like if you look at HIPAA, like HIPAA, it was written in 1996, which was, most people weren't doing telehealth and things like
Right.
that back then. And then,
Right.
they had a new privacy rule that was finalized in 2000. And then in 2003, of course, they came out with some more rules around like EPHI and administrative and physical safeguards. And I mean,
Right.
2006,
Yes,
2009.
I've had a lawyer tell me that if anyone wanted to look at anyone's books really closely, we'd all be in trouble.
Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. A lot of the people that we talk to, they essentially try to avoid handling patient record as much as possible so they can
Right.
skirt around HIPAA. Or they use systems that are essentially offload a lot of it. Like Epic is, kind of the industry leader. Um, in our opinion, in patient record management. Obviously now, in 2020, well, in 2025, I guess now we were expecting, some changes to HIPAA, around like multi-factor authentication. It had to be mandatory. Data encryption, not only patient health information at rest, but in transit. And now in 2025, patients and providers are going to have to go through an annual risk analysis, which is fun. Yeah, I was like kidding.
Oh my God.
Like a colonoscopy every year.
Wow.
And not only that too, but coming up with incident response, disaster recovery plans,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
internal audits, compliance audits, and not only that too, but with the 2025 proposed rule changes, they're going to be a little bit stricter on vendor management, and how sensitive data gets out and how you respond to that. And they're going to talk a little bit in some of these new proposed rules about employee turnover. So like if somebody leaves your practice, like how you suspend their access to PHI, which is fun. So a lot of fun stuff to prepare for.
Right, which is why I'm going to a coaching kind of model.
Sure.
What's happening is it's forcing out a lot of good practitioners.
It is.
Because it's become more and more administrative versus actually giving treatment. And, I think that's, you could kind of understand where it comes from, but it's just overwhelming for most of us, especially unless you have maybe what it's going to do is make all therapists have to join these big practices so that the administrators handle everything and they don't have to do it. But when I joined this one online company, my salary was a third of what I usually make. So, I think that's the other thing is they're making it very hard for people to actually provide treatment in my field. It's very discouraging for me.
Yeah, I agree. They're making it complicated to be in healthcare. If we had more of like a starter kit, like if we gave, and I hope the government listens to things like these, but if we had like a starter kit, like, hey, look, here's a starter kit that you can use to get into healthcare, especially as a mom and pop practice, with,
Right.
a handful of providers, where it's not expensive. A lot of the heavy lifting is done for you. Out of the box, you're ready to kind of just start seeing patients and treating patients and providing, extra care, like, amazing care. Like, I wish we got there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because our healthcare system is a wonky one. I've seen it from the other side. I've lived in Europe and I've spent quite a lot of time in the markets out there and in learning how they treat patients and yeah, it's a very weird process, here. Especially considering everything operates on a referral network, so your primary care refers you to XYZ, who then refers you to XYZ, and then it's just this snowball of referrals, which doesn't really exist in other healthcare markets that I've been a part of. I'm curious to your approach. So from what I read about you, I mean, you're a very accomplished individual, first of all, let me say. You also work with corporate teams. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So I'm curious to how
professional teams. So I would say not big corporations.
Sure.
So if I ask you a question, maybe I'm interrupting too soon.
No. Go ahead.
Just that I've worked a lot with the law school in Austin, helping train young lawyers and helping them learn how they are on a team, and some entrepreneurs, some small businesses that are more that not some family businesses, but also just smaller kinds of groups who are looking at how to do better leadership.
Would you say that how you cater your curriculum or your therapy services, how did you refine those? Obviously it sounds like you came from seeing people one-on-one in a patient setting, kind of graduating into working with multiple people, kind of trying to people learn differently, people, process information differently. So how did you approach seeing somebody one-on-one to then, coaching teams and developing team, team building?
So, a lot of this just Blake happens by chance, where I think I had a client who worked at a law firm who said, "Hey, would you come and give a talk to the young women lawyers?" And we're like, "Sure, why not?" I think a lot of opportunities is that as well. I think I could do that. Let's try. In fact, I think that tends to be one of the things that women have a harder time doing, of just being able to try something, even if you're not sure you have all the skills. And that makes us then get the rest of those skills. So I started working and taking up some of those opportunities and saying, "Hey, what about doing some workshop? Hey, what about me learning what are some different ways to teach people about themselves?" So, for example, some people love working with some kind of profiles. So we use different kind of behavioral profiles that help someone see themselves better. Then we do horse workshops where people learn leadership skills from the horses who can't tell you what to do, but they react, and you kind of learn from their reaction if you're connected or you're a leader or not. And I think that as I grew, I wanted to share it with different kinds of people. And then that grew from there.
How do you feel like psychology has evolved? I mean, since you got in the industry,
Oh gosh.
a while ago.
Yeah. Wow. Well, because I sat around in my college in one of those early self-awareness groups in 1975. So
Wow, that's crazy.
it's changed quite a bit since then. For one thing, we have so much more data now of what actually helps. We have more of a sense of we have to deal with people. Listen, when I first went to sex therapy school, they believed that almost all sexual problems were in your head.
Wow.
And we've learned that that's just not true. There are so many things that are about how you are, what happens through trauma, and how you are in your body, as well as different kind of biological, medical issues. We just know so much more. So much more of what I do really in my practice is tell people what we know about. Let me tell you what we now know or what we don't know about X.
Sure. I was thinking you would, I mean, based off our limited interactions, I was thinking you'd say something also along the lines of the people's willingness to participate in like therapy. It used to be kind of taboo. Nobody would talk about it, that you're in therapy, and it was kind of like one of those little secrets, that like you would keep.
Really good point.
You keep under like tight lock and key. But now people are, oh yeah, I just had,
That's true.
I'm going to therapy at 1:30. Like people are more open. And with the rise of, the digital infrastructure that we live in, people have kind of embraced this and the lack of, access to physicians and now, I can connect with you who's in New Jersey. I'm in Vegas, and not have access to somebody of your skill set here because the healthcare system in Vegas is absolutely terrible. Besides the point, but the openness for therapy has changed and how people interpret it. And yeah, I mean, no shame here. I've been in therapy for multiple years, right? You know, because
Me too.
I watched this one I don't know what it was like an info doc or something, and they talked about how the brain, and you probably will love this, but how the brain has evolved to modern stress and modern scheduling. Like our brain is not designed to process the amount of information that we put through it every single day. So burnout, right? I mean, so many of the workforce industry is burned. At least in my field, I can tell you for sure, probably in others. But your brain was not designed to take and use it the way that we use it in this modern world.
True. Right. Yeah. Well, that's such a good point that we know now that like part of the reason that we started our podcast and we're also now writing a book is to be able to get information out to people that they may not have. So many people need just information so that
Yeah.
they can live their life more effectively.
Yeah, what areas do you feel like of psychology are evolving the fastest right now, or maybe even the ones that are maybe the most misunderstood, you know, whether it's clinical or
Yeah, I think the whole issue around body, around somatic training, trauma, of PTSD, stress. I think so much more is being studied about that, about how to help people. I've had multiple trainings in dealing with trauma and how to integrate people, kind of a mind body approach, positive intelligence, emotional intelligence, how you really kind of put together the different things. Because one, we either had the idea that insight was enough. Once I understand what happened to me, I will be completely healthy. Well, that didn't seem to work.
right.
Right. Or if I just know all of my emotions, that'll work. If it's really about how do you integrate, how do you understand your history and your survival mechanism, how do you live in your body in a way that helps it calm down so it can respond to all this stress, and how do you shift? How do you shift to think more productively or act more productively? So that's to me the magic that is making these things more doable, more access.
Right. Do you feel like there's newer promising approaches or maybe modalities that are more promising that you've started to realize in the field? Such as like psychedelic assisted therapy or maybe even type of integrative.
I have several of my clients who've done that, and I think it's been very helpful to them. So, I think the idea is we do need to be open to what are the new things. I just recently took a course in positive intelligence, which it really was kind of taking all these complicated ideas and making them more accessible on your app. It's how do you get people to start using the tools?
Yeah. Something that I've noticed too, or maybe you could probably talk on, is the type of persona that, generally we'll see a therapist is usually a higher people a lot of underprivileged communities don't have access to physical or I'm sorry, psychological therapy.
Right.
How do you feel like we can introduce psychotherapy to these types of communities? And how do you think we can kind of get through that, this is life changing?
Well, I think that that's so important and such a big problem. And, I think we're losing the middle class more and more, not gaining it. So there are more and more people who don't have access to any health care or mental health care. That's part of why I've always liked coming from social work, because I think it's trying to reach all people versus limited. But I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know how people, what I've always tried to do is offer some low fee services along in my practice. I try to do so. I'm clearly not doing them now that I'm not in Austin, but some free talks where people can come. I think I've worked in doctors' offices where I would be a part of the team. So we were doing that early on. And I think that, help people be able to get some access. Because again, it's information. A lot of people just don't know.
Right.
And men are afraid to ask.
Totally. It's almost like embarrassing for people to ask for help these days, which is a shame.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and something that I've thought a lot about, and maybe, maybe there's no answer. Maybe you have the perfect answer, but it seems like people, and I can only speak from my personal experience, I got into therapy when I was like, the glass was overflowing of life. And I'm like, I need to see I need to talk to somebody. Do you think there are do you think there is a preventative approach to therapy, to psychotherapy, instead of just saying, oh shit, I'm here and now I need to talk to somebody? Like how do you get ahead of needing therapy?
Well, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes. And I have had some families where they have their kids come in, not because they're having problems, but because, hey, they're a teenager. Let's get you in so that you start getting some self-awareness. And, I think more and more people are aware that they need to help their kids have skills, especially now. You think of what kids are going through. Young people have so much pressure on them, and there's so many limitations that are put on them now in this world with what's happening. So, I think that takes us. It takes our generations to help these new generations come in that would give them tools so they can say, hey, are you reaching close to that point? Then it's time to go back in and talk to somebody.
Sure.
I'm working right now with a kid who's doing a junior year abroad, and her parents are like, we're still going to have you talk to her. So even though she's in South America, we're doing therapy.
Yeah.
Just because they knew she was going to be in some new experiences that she wasn't sure how to deal with.
I mean, it's amazing that parents are that supportive of her mental health. I'm curious, and this is going to be a huge pivot, but we've talked a lot about transitioning Relate Center, from seeing patients in person to, COVID, to the online boom, to telehealth. We've touched on a lot of that. Something that I can speak from to my personal experience, and that's a lot of the stuff that I try to bring into the podcast, because I'm a patient. We're all patients. But with the rise of telehealth, you've also seen the decline in the quality of care. So how does Relate Center address that?
Well, I'm not sure how each one of us would say that. I miss not being able to have some personal contact. I think what's best is you mix the two. So you have some real contact with somebody, and then you can work virtually. I don't have that opportunity right now. Part of what I'm doing to try to stay more connected is I use my text and email more, so that I try to let people know if they're having a hard time. We can check in with each other. We can do a short call. There are lots of ways to try to kind of get past that. I just have an hour once a week or every other week, because that's the other thing that's happened a lot, because the costs have keep going up. A lot of people are now coming in every other week. And that's much harder to keep the thread of how are you doing? Are you making progress? Where are you getting stuck? So, I think you have to just up your communication in different kind of ways.
That makes a lot of sense.
I had people who are like driving in their car and doing therapy, and like, that's not a good idea.
Pull over, sit down, and enjoy our discussion.
I had someone who was doing a garage sale while she was trying to do a
Oh
therapy
my
session. I'm like,
gosh.
no, let's reschedule.
Well, if she cleans out all that junk, then, maybe she'll feel, some release there. Um, something that I've noticed, and, just a little bit more about my personal life, is therapy is about what you get out, what you put in to therapy. And it comes back down to how you communicate, how honest you are. But a lot of during that process, it's more about self-realization. Like when you're trying to break down your problems to somebody who just knows a few things about you and you're trying to distill it, in that process, you simplify your complicated problems and it changes the way that you feel about your problems. And additionally, it gives you a new perspective. So I've noticed, at least in my therapy, a lot of my session is like this realization, like I made this out to be such a big deal, but it wasn't. Or like, it's a realization process.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about it differently, but
No, I think that that's a really good way to say that. I think about so much of the time we have to see that we are not our problems. We are a whole perfect self and we have problems and challenges. And when it feels like it's all one, it feels terrible.
totally.
But when you can say, "Oh, I'm having a problem with blah blah blah, my ex, my job,
Sure.
tell me about your job," and then you get some distance, like you said, that's part of simplifying it, but it's also getting some being able to look at it from a different point of view.
Yeah.
That whole idea about the elephant, where you look at the elephant as a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to be able to do that to really understand and shift.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're really helping you shift your physiology from that fight or flight kind of anxious place to more of a relaxed, kind of calm place. Because that's
Yeah.
where we really think best.
Yeah. And then you get in there and do your
Yeah.
thing. um, I'm curious, and as I started in cybersecurity, and my career has been, 10 years plus in cybersecurity now, something that I never really thought about. And now that I'm in this industry, I think a lot about ethics, right? Like what's ethical, what's unethical. So this might be an interesting question, but what do you see as the biggest ethical challenges in psychology, especially in the digital age?
So I had a mentor who was kind of reading the tea leaves and said, eventually the good therapists are going to be called something like psychics or, something
Miss
because
Cleo.
you're right. You won't be able to be an effective therapist under all these rules. And so I think that's going to be the biggest ethical problem is when we start feel like, okay, let me give you an example. So I treat trans people and women, and men too, but
Sure.
in Texas, if a neighbor heard I was treating that neighbor's kid who was 13 because they had trans issues, they could turn me in. They could take away my license and charge me $10,000.
That's crazy.
If I told a woman she could go to another state to have an abortion, I could lose my license.
That's embarrassing.
So, you're having to, how do you be really helpful to people who need help?
Right.
And I'm talking about really crazy things that are happening, those examples. But then you're just talking about, if I'm spending all my time following the rules, how much time is left for me to actually do the therapy? So right there's two kinds of ethical issues in that way. I'm giving you the crazy thing that's happening in our world
Yeah.
politically, but I'm also just talking about all the rules and regulations that are coming in.
I feel like that's a mic drop moment right there. Like how therapists, doctors, whatever, nurses, like should be focused on quality of care. And that's the most important thing, instead of, tiptoeing around policies or legal challenges or all these things. It just eats into the quality of care, the experience that you get from your, practicing physician or psychologist or whatever. It just takes away from everything.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that we're here.
Yeah. And of course, we want to protect people from bad treatment.
Sure.
Right. So
100%.
you understand where these things come from, but when they've kind of gone over the top.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. This is another interesting question. I came with some hard questions, in case you can't tell.
You have.
So for our listeners out there, we have a lot in the tech space. We have a lot of, systems administrators, people that serve and wear multiple hats, and they're juggling all these different things that life has thrown at you or your boss has thrown at you. Not everybody is going to be able to go directly to you, maybe a couple of them, right? But how do you separate a good therapist from a bad therapist? And how do you know this is the right therapist for me?
Well, I think our job as therapists is trying to teach people how to make those decisions. So I know that there's I think Psychology Today does it, but on the website for therapists, I think they talk a little bit about how do you choose a therapist. I think one of the things I say to people is the research, at least the research a couple of years ago, is that within like 8 to 10 sessions, a client should be making some progress. If not, it's the wrong therapist or the wrong technique. So I always tell people, let's talk about what your goals are. We're going to be checking in to see if we're actually making progress, if I'm the right match for you. I think that's our responsibility, is to help people think about if they're getting what they want from the process. Now, clearly not everybody does that, but that's what I do and I like.
Yeah. Amazing response. This is kind of a next generation. I kind of want to talk a little bit about the next generation. I feel like you have so much insight that, maybe somebody out there might be listening who's interested in psychology or, maybe getting into the field, or maybe somebody's daughter, son, niece, nephew. You know what I mean? That's how podcasts work, right? How do you think psychology education and training need to evolve to prepare future therapists?
Well, I hope we have young people who are interested in doing this, because I love what I do. It's a powerful thing to feel like you're making a difference in people's lives and offering something that helps, versus something else. So, I love what I do. I think that you had a great idea. And why don't we get some kind of in school? So when I went to school, they didn't train us about how to be a therapist. They expected us to go into agencies and not do something on our own. There should be classes on how do you build a business? How do you think
100%.
about this? How do you streamline it so you can do the best job you can? How do you think about what kind of ongoing training you should be doing to keep up with what's happening in the field? How do you do that? How do you put together a support system? So it would be really great, because we have to right now, you're just kind of scrambling around to find those answers.
Right.
Fortunately, you have to be in supervision right now, and good supervisors are going to help people cobble that together. But again, it would be so nice if you had some systems that were really thinking about that in a better way.
I couldn't agree more. Let's frame that also towards, maybe psych students who are, just coming out of the university. Hey, I don't even know what type of therapist I want to be. I'm sure
they're not supposed to know. They don't need to know that. They need to know, I like this field, I like learning, and I'm gonna take a smattering of different things and get a direction. Hopefully people start out more general. That's what you want to do, and say, "Ooh, I really like working with X."
Yeah.
So that people also have personality or behavioral traits that help lead them, right? So if you're a really analytic person who likes lots of detail, you might want to go more into some of the testing. They're doing some incredible kinds of testing these days, so that you're really looking more at that data or research, or a research person, or if you really more a generalist, you're gonna like to do more. You might want to be more a therapist. Like, there's so many things now that are available once people get kind of the basics.
That makes a ton of sense. This podcast has just, we've done, we've covered so much, and, something that, I guess before our discussion, I had never really thought about, but, we talked a bit about coaching. We talked about therapy. We talked about psychology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to somebody like me, like, those are pretty much the same thing, but they're not. So do you see a future where the lines are blurred between like coaching, therapy, psychology? Like, do you see those merging together?
Well, I think certain groups are. So I think psychiatrists are becoming more and more giving medicine. They're getting more into the medical verse. Used to be psychiatrists were great therapists. Some of the best therapists in history were psychiatrists. Jung, Freud, they were great.
Yeah.
So now I think psychology, social work, clinical coaching, they're more and more coming together. More and more of us therapists are getting coaching training, and more coaches are getting therapy training. So we're kind of seeing the skills of, sometimes you want to be very practical, help people with a particular problem. They've identified a problem. We're going to solve that problem. Some people are here for more how to understand their life, and how to help explore what the problems are in there that's holding them back, that they may not be able to describe. So I think that's all kind of coming together.
Let's get out the crystal ball. And in 10 years, what do you think therapy will look like psychology?
Psychics?
The crystal ball is the difference.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to continue to get two-tiered. That people who can't afford it are going to get the agency 6 sessions, take medicine, and we're done. I mean, it's going to be, and then people who have money are going to have better health care and better mental health care. I think that's the sad thing.
That's terrible and tragic.
Mm. Only thing we can try to help do is get people to be aware and vote for what they need.
Yeah, 100%. And again, we talked a little bit about, like doing a new business starter kit and all these like these amazing things that could happen. If you could redesign one part of the psychology field, whether it be licensing, education, or even, delivery, what do you think it would be?
Okay, what holds me back is the threat of being sued.
Wow.
So there are many horror stories of someone who's decided they don't like the therapist and they, put in a complaint and it can ruin the therapist's life. So much of what I having a license, even though they say it protects you, it also doesn't protect you. So, I have to think about, is this person who wants treatment going to be the kind of person that I can trust? And worrying about that. And so you hate to have to make that kind of be thinking about that.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, from what you were saying is like, oh my God, I'm going to be sued. I don't have any of those kind of things in place that you're talking about, like,
sorry.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest concern I have in my field.
That's crazy. Like, I mean, you're out here trying to help people. And, just because you're out here helping people, I mean, usually that's rooted, right? You think about nurses, you think about doctors, you think about therapists, right? Like you're all mission driven to help people have a better life, to live a safer life, or, to be healthy or whatever it is. Like, there should be adequate protections in place for people like you where you can focus on, patient
Where it's not so
satisfaction.
hard to worry. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if, God forbid, a surgeon cuts off the wrong leg. We actually had somebody that talked about that on one of our other podcast episodes, and he, made medical robots, and we were talking about, he was talking about some type of the way that it drills through parts of the skull, and there used to be there's a very small margin of error, because if you hit a nerve here, like you're paralyzed for like the rest of your life. And you have one thing, and they made some type of technology where, you can, I don't know what very complicated, but you can see where that nerve is on the patient.
So you can
go around it, which is crazy.
It is. Yeah. And, as we're talking, you also want to make sure that bad treatment, people don't get bad treatment, don't get the wrong leg taken off or traumatized with their therapist because they did a bad job. I mean,
right.
Again, there's so many things we're trying to balance here about having good treatment. And, how do you, and of course, what's the difference of bad treatment? And sometimes people make mistakes that
sure. Yeah.
aren't on purpose, but still could be devastating. I mean, there's black and white and there's so much gray.
Yeah. I got 2 more questions for you. This has been a crazy fun episode.
It's been great to talk with you too.
How do you feel like psychologists can better collaborate with other disciplines? Because, you're getting referrals from, MDs or DOs or, I mean, you talked about dealing with, even the educational space of dealing with students and up and coming entrepreneurs and things of that. How do you feel like psychologists can better collaborate with other disciplines in the future?
Well, it would be really nice if we had some kind of a space, an online space where we could could connect with each other. That would, because we end up leaving messages for physicians, trying to get let them know that we've seen their patient or give them some update. It's always hard because everybody's so busy trying to find some kind of a space that we could all connect with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be kind of like LinkedIn, but for just doctors,
Yeah.
where there's no spam and no BS. So we talked a lot about, entrepreneurship. I feel like we talked about, starting a business, growing a business, licensing, I mean, therapy, I mean, psychology. I mean, we've touched on a lot. What role do you feel like psychology will play in solving, bigger global challenges? And something that comes to mind is like, there's people that, I mean, dare I say it, are deranged in this modern world.
Yes.
But also you have a lot of anxiety in this world. You
Right.
also have a
Well,
lot
I
of
think it's all about the
loneliness.
nervous system. I think you got to go back to the body. You have to help people recognize when they're in that sympathetic part of our nervous system, which is fight or flight.
Yep.
You have to help them recognize how to shift into a parasympathetic state. And I think it's all about that and how you co-regulate. So, you co-regulate. I can help regulate somebody if I'm in a good spot, or my animals. I have my standard poodles who are part of my practice, petting the animals, working with the horses. There's ways that we help co-regulate each other. And I think that's how we're going to have to help people.
That is an absolute epic response. I can't thank you enough for spending so much of your time with us. I feel like I got a free therapy lesson out of this.
Hey,
I
Blake, it's been great talking to you. Thanks. And I'm so sorry I missed the first time we had it set up.
No, you made
I'm
up
glad
for it
you
this
hung in
time.
there with me.
No, of course you made up for it this time. Let people know where they can find you, how they can connect with you,
Great.
let
Okay.
them know.
So there are two different websites. That's Relate Center in Austin, Texas. That's relatecenter.com, or beyondboundariescoaching.net, which is a bummer that it's .net. It's Sarah at Relate Center is the easiest way to go. And I'd love to hear from anyone who'd be interested in either just talking more about this or coming in for some work.
Sure. We'll make sure to leave.
And our podcast.
Yeah.
We have a podcast on Beyond Boundaries Coaching. You can find us on Apple, on all the major podcasting services.
We will certainly, in our show notes here, link everything where you can find
Great.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Everybody, this was a fun one. I can't thank you for spending so much time with us, sharing your opinion on psychology. I mean, we talked a lot about entrepreneurship and the future of therapy. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for you. Great to talk with, and good luck. And I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah,
and hear your other podcast. And it sounds really interesting.
It'll be out before you know it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
That's a wrap on this episode of Encrypted Ambition. Subscribe wherever you listen. And if today's guest inspired you, leave us a review or share the show with someone in your circle. To learn more about how we support innovators with AI, cybersecurity, and compliance, head to petronelatech.com. Thanks for listening. And remember, the future favors the bold.